Hello there. Today we're talking about something you may have had, well, mixed experiences with, and that is the Performance Improvement Plan, or PIP as they're sometimes called. Now, I'm sure you've probably come across the term, and do they work? Well, the research is pretty hard to come by in terms of exact numbers, as you may expect, but it makes for pretty grim reading. The Wall Street Journal puts it at about 25% success. Other estimates put it as high as 40%, but that still really says that the success rate is, or the failure rate is at least 60% and probably higher. And more research says that up to 90% of people that complete a performance improvement plan end up leaving anyway in the next 12 months. So the research isn't great, but is there a better way? Stay tuned. Hello there, Ian here once again, and it's a pleasure to be able to be with you. I hope this is catching you happy, healthy and strong. So, the Performance Improvement Plan. A PIP, or Performance Improvement Plan, is the thing that you get put on when your last staff evaluation or appraisal was not up to the required standard. So we wheel out the Performance Improvement Plan of the 3 to 5 things that you need to improve on, or their serious consequences. And you are then under the PIP. Now, here are some thoughts on this because the success rate isn't great. So, to begin with, do we have to make corrections in behaviour? Because if we are not performing at an accepted standard in exchange for our salary, if we're not performing, our behaviour is misaligned. It's out of alignment with what's expected. So the first thing to remember is that people respect what we inspect to begin with. And when we get to the appraisal or the staff evaluation, whatever you call it, typically, maybe not in your organisation, but in a lot of organisations, typically that is the annual appraisal. Well, you're looking at a year's worth of performance. Many companies now do it every 6 months. I would say that's better than 12, but I would advocate a more regular check-in to make sure that staff are performing as they should be in your organisation and within your culture. Remember, when a long distance aircraft flies, let's say from Asia to Europe, it's off course about 90% of the time. But the course corrections are very small. The autopilot or the pilot, him or herself, keeps it nicely on track overall because the corrections are small. We don't wait until we get to the destination and say, holy smokes, we're off course by a huge margin. So many of us managers, or coaches as I like to call them these days, are reluctant to share small complaints or correct small behaviours. And I think that is a mistake. And let me give you an example from my own life. Okay, when I began leading a team a long time ago, it was pointed out, and I suddenly became aware that the crew that I was responsible for was not at their desk until about 9:30, when our standard hours of operation were 9 o'clock to start, and some were in a customer support capacity too. So I suddenly became aware, or was it pointed out to me, I can't remember, that my crew were not here. And it turns out that they would come in at about 9 o'clock and dump the bags and that sort of stuff, and then go for breakfast. and then come back again at about 9:20, 9:30. And that behaviour, was it their fault or my fault? Well, I'm accountable for my team and responsible for their actions, so that falls on me. I don't know how that happened, but it probably happened by someone going down for breakfast and getting a cup of coffee and a bite to eat and coming back maybe 10 minutes late, but no one said anything. So maybe 2 or 3 people then went down, no one meaning me, no one caught it. So then it became the accepted practice that being available for work at 9 o'clock didn't matter. That was the signal that was being sent. So remember, small course corrections early are always better than getting to the performance improvement plan when you get to the next appraisal. Don't worry about criticising behaviour gaps, because this is a discrepancy. This is the standard. This is where you are at. This is a discrepancy that you're pointing out, which has to change. As long as we explain why that discrepancy matters, if you're in a customer support capacity and you need to be available to answer the phone at 9 o'clock, that is the standard. Now, when we are correcting behaviour, when we get to an evaluation or a touch point with our staff, when they are not performing to an accepted level, it's normally a mixture of small things, not one big thing. And we can catch those small things, as I just explained. If it was one really big thing, that would stand out very early on. If it was one big thing that they were just not doing, and we probably catch that at recruitment and interview stage anyway. So when we get to that evaluation, it's likely to be a number of small things that we could have caught. So when we are correcting behaviour, here's a little formula that we can remember. Stop, start and keep. What does that person need to stop doing? And if we go back to our simple timekeeping example, and this was before the whole work from home thing began, this was years ago. Look at timekeeping. What do they need to stop doing? They need to stop coming in to the office late. What do they have to start doing? Well, coming on time. If coming in on time is a challenge because they're coming in by train and the train is sometimes late or the traffic is bad, what do they have to start doing? Well, start your journey 40 minutes earlier. How do you do that? Well, you set the alarm clock 40 minutes earlier. So what does that mean? You have to get to bed 40 minutes earlier the night before. So be specific about what they have to stop doing, start doing, and maybe keep doing, because they're probably doing something that's right. So emphasize what they're doing that is good and they should keep doing. But when you put it in that formula, stop, start and keep, then it makes sense. And then what we often miss is that we need to be coaching them on sticking to that standard over the next period, whatever that period is, and however long it takes. Because just to tell somebody what to do and then forget about it, we're human beings and we sort of drift back to the standards that may be comfortable, and sometimes we're not even aware that we've drifted. So, correcting behaviour is necessary. Just don't call it a performance improvement plan. Put them on the PIP, but don't call it a PIP. Okay. And here is another reason why I'm not in favour of the performance improvement plan as it's stated there. Because when we put somebody on one of these things, we label that person as somebody who is not performing as they should do. These people are under a performance improvement plan. That puts a label on their back. And sometimes we can incorrectly cause a B player to appear like a C player because they're on a PIP. Sometimes we've got a potential A player that might be struggling a bit. But if we label them as being under a PIP, then most of us consider the PIP label as notice of eventual termination. Sadly, most members of staff these days that come under a performance improvement plan basically are at risk of checking out because they know the writing's on the wall, and like that stat said at the beginning of the piece, up to 90% of people that successfully complete a performance improvement plan end up leaving because they think that you think or their manager thinks that they are not the right person. And sometimes they could be, but they're just struggling. So again, try and avoid labeling it as a PIP, because we could just break that bond that they have with the organization forever. And we might just lose a potential good player because of it. So I really hope that that did make sense and give you some ideas, some practical ideas on how to correct behavior before you get to the performance improvement plan and run the risk of losing potentially good members of staff. So once more, I really hope that gave you some ideas, and until we share again, take care of each other.